Regional Youth Group Prayer. Dear Lord, thank you for the opportunity to meet today. May we engage with each other with faith and perseverance. May we manage each situation with wisdom and value. May we speak and serve with integrity and purpose. We have come, O Lord, Holy Spirit. We have come before you, hampered and dead by our many and grievous sins, but for a special purpose, gathered together in your name. Come to us and be with us and enter our heart. Lord, we invite you to work within us today. Amen.
Hi, I'm Marky Hora. Team bahay ka rin ba katulad ko? Pero gusto mong laging updated sa mga balitang napapanahon at interesting? From the comfort of your own home, maaari ka nang maging informed. Sa Regional News Group o RNG Luzon, mabilis at accurate na balita, madali ninyong maa-access. Pwedeng via Twitter. I-tweet lang ang inyong sumbong at hinaing gamit ang hashtag RNG Luzon, Instagram, Facebook, at YouTube. Hit the notification bell para lagi kayong updated sa aming mga bagong videos. Like, follow, and subscribe ang social media accounts ng RNG Luzon.
Hey guys! Grasya po ito. Lagi ka bang on the go at hanap mo ay balitang sigurado, totoo at walang tinatago? Sa Regional News Group o RNG Luzon, mabilis at accurate na balita, madali niyong ma-access. Pwede via Twitter. I-tweet lang ang inyong sumbong at hinaing using the hashtag RNG Luzon. Instagram, Facebook, at YouTube. Huwag kakalimutang i-hit ang notification bell para lagi kayong updated sa aming mga bagong videos. Like, follow, and subscribe ang mga social media accounts ng RNG Luzon.
The views and opinions expressed by the host do not necessarily state or reflect those of the company and its management. Furthermore, the views and opinions of the guest do not reflect those of the hosts, the show, the management, and the network.
Autonomy is very important for the Cordillera Administrative Region so that the region will eventually become Cordillera Autonomous Region. It is the dream of our forefathers.
If ever you want to ask something about autonomy, this is the best platform for now that we could be in.
Why do we need autonomy for the Cordilleras? Because we need to determine for ourselves as indigenous peoples the kind of development, the kind of progress that we want for our region.
The Cordillera region is one of the most naturally resource-rich and culturally diverse areas in the country. Its mountains and rivers are the source of clean irrigation and energy for northern Luzon. Its mines and tourist spots feed a significant portion of the nation's economy. Its highland farms supply much of the country's demands for cabbages, potatoes, strawberries, and other high-value crops. Its people and diverse cultures have brought honor, pride, joy, and prestige to our country. However, as the region continues to be a significant basin for natural and human resources for the country, most of its towns and provinces have seen a stark lack of progress and development. Many municipalities are among the lowest earning and least productive in the Philippines. The region has the least percentage of paved roads, with the mountainous terrain demanding higher costs than the majority of lowland coastal Philippines. Its regional government offices that bring crucial services to the people receive the least funding among all regions. Benefits from these resources have mostly been enjoyed outside the Cordillera, with its people having to strive twice as hard to make the best out of their situation. The Cordillera Administrative Region is relatively young compared to the other regions in the country. In 1971, when the country was reorganized into 13 regions by Presidential Decree No. 1, the provinces of Benguet and Mountain Province were included as part of the Region 1 or Ilocos Region, while Kalinga, Apayao, and Ifugao were included in Region 2 or the Cagayan Region. Due to the national policies that gave priority to population and road development towards regional capital towns, the mountain provinces were left behind in the development and was used to a resource base. The indigenous people who considered these lands their sacred ancestral domain were seldom consulted on development projects, and some felt no choice but to join the insurgency. The indigenous peoples of the Cordillera have had a long and proud history of resistance against colonial influence. A strong connection to their land has led to a culture of environmental preservation and harmony exemplified by the likes of Macleing Dulag and Conrado Balueg. Those who fought and were deemed rebels in Cordillera had little to no desire to uphold the agenda of the Communist Party. The Cordillerans' fight was for the protection of their land, families, and way of life. As the EDSA revolution changed the national landscape, the rebels led by Conrado Balueg called for a sipat or cessation of hostilities with the Philippine government. Thus, on September 13, 1986, the former rebels from the Cordillera gave up their arms and chose to continue their struggle through peaceful means. it was agreed on that day in Mount Data Hotel in Bauco Mountain Province that the best way to correct years of development neglect that led to insurgency was for the South provinces of the former Mountain Province, along with the province of Abra, to become part of a new autonomous region of the Cordillera. To aid in this transition, the Cordillera Administrative Region was created by virtue of Executive Order 220 on July 15, 1987, with the following objectives. First, to administer the affairs of government in the region. Second, accelerate the economic and social growth and development of the units of the region. And third, prepare for the establishment of the autonomous region in the Cordillera. 34 years later, this agreement has yet to be fulfilled. We look onto the current administration led by President Rodrigo Roa Duterte to fulfill the Philippine government's commitment to meaningful peace and development by causing the Congress to enact a truly organic act to establish the autonomous region of the Cordillera.
Gusto niyo bang sumikat, kumita at makilala? Advertise now and reach your target market anytime, anywhere.
Mga kaibigan, ako po si Dauby D. Guzman. Hanap nyo ba ay mabilis, tama at napapanahong balita? Tumutok na sa mga social media accounts ng Regional News Group o RNG Luzon.
Pwede via Twitter. I-tweet lang ang inyong sumbong at hinaing gamit ang hashtag RNG Luzon. Instagram, Facebook, at YouTube. Hit the notification bell para lagi kayong updated sa aming mga bagong videos.
Kaya ano pang hinihintay nyo? Like, follow, subscribe sa mga social media accounts ng RNG Luzon.
Naimbag man nga daw yung kakailyan. Siyempre, since we are still celebrating the month of the indigenous peoples, ti pagsasalitaan tayo tatakad maipanggap lata iti autonomiya. So ti topic tayo tatakad very specific. The core messages of autonomy to the people as regards to policies and of course as regards to progress. So in general, denggan tayo man iti kapanunutan, dagiti umili, no anya ti makunada, maipanggap daytoy talo nga core messages. So we have here with us a millennial who is not even a Cordilleran by blood, but she considers herself a Cordilleran because she worked in the Cordilleras for 6 years, and since her college days, her advocacy was already on how to promote the local products of the indigenous peoples. So let's hear from Miss Jamaica Ona.
Good afternoon po, I'm Jamaica Ona, and I'm a millennial who in the past 6 years have served on projects, advocacy-based projects for indigenous peoples. These projects involve educating indigenous peoples of their rights, researching about indigenous peoples, their situation, promoting ways of life of IPs, and as well as some aspects of the indigenous people's culture, material culture, and the arts. So, what I know, or what I've learned from the Igorot, from the Cordillera, in the aspect of autonomy is not just on the land, but also this concept of self-determined development. Self-determined development is the kind of development that is identified by, chosen by the indigenous peoples, and actually decided by the IPs, where they are key players of this development, be it a business or scaling up of their livelihoods. It involves that they would be given an opportunity to hone and nourish their livelihoods, some aspects of their cultures and the arts. They would be given key roles in innovating it and actually being involved in getting the benefit from it. So that is a good concept for them, which we would also want to pursue in the coming years, especially that we have to live in a more sustainable way, and we have to embrace concepts of and practices of of sustainable development.
We're back, so you've heard the sentiments or the thoughts of the millennials as regards to autonomy for the Cordilleras. This time, let's listen from a human rights worker specifically fighting for the preservation of the environment, to look into the beauty of the world by understanding biodiversity. May samon nga mangi pangpangulo, we know mangi forward iti interest dagiti indigenous peoples. She attended several talks, I would say meetings, fora in different countries already, and naunag ti panakaawat na iti autonomiya. Let's hear from Miss Helen Biangalen Magata. Good morning! Today's episode of our Talk Time show would be on the 3 P's of autonomy, or the 3 core messages, which are people, process, and progress. So to talk about people as regards to autonomy, I have here with me my friend, my sister, Helen Biangalen Magata, who's been working or forwarding the interest of the indigenous people since her college years at the University of the Philippines. So after she graduated, she worked for Tubtuba to specifically on the issues of climate change and biodiversity. So this morning, we want to hear from her what she can say about how autonomy would strengthen the identity of the indigenous peoples. So Ading, take it away.
Thank you, Manang Maria. I think the question should be, will the autonomy really strengthen the identity of indigenous peoples in the Cordillera? I believe that the autonomy is driven by the right of indigenous peoples, or by the assertion of indigenous peoples for their self-determined development. Indigenous peoples have the right to determine the kind of development that they want to go to. But it would be good to ask, maybe, or to question, for this instance, for the autonomy bill that is being pushed for in the Cordillera, for whose interest is this? Is this pushed genuinely by indigenous peoples themselves, or is it pushed for, or whose interest is it? Is it for indigenous peoples, or for a few elite, or for a few politicians? I think that's a very critical question to ask for us to really answer the question if the autonomy is going to strengthen the identity of indigenous peoples. Second, I think that for a genuine autonomy to really strengthen indigenous people's rights, there should be requisites that we should look for. First is that how is this autonomy going to strengthen the individual identities of indigenous peoples in the Cordillera? Yes, we should celebrate unity in diversity, but this should not in any way parang i-dilute or i-erode yung in specific and different identities of indigenous peoples in the region. So itong mga elements na to, itong mga requisites na to should be in place before a genuine autonomy happens. Another requirement and element that I would think is necessary for a genuine autonomy is that what about the governance structure? How will it make sure that the existing customary governance structures in the ILI, for example, is there a mechanism? Is there a way for the elders to come? Or will this just be an autonomy where it's going to be led by politicians and it's just taking out It's just taking out the central government away and making a small, making, halimbawa, I mean, the usual governance system,
System.
and just making it localized.
Without incorporating the indigenous customary practices.
Exactly, yes. So, I couldn't think of other elements, but I think yung crucial doon is that yung customary governance. And in terms of resources, who's going to decide on what? Ano yung klase ng decision making wherein it's really participatory, that we are not going to be just beneficiaries, but we are co-equal. I mean, we are co-equals. We have a say in whatever development our region has to go to. Yeah. So, I mean, in short, strengthening the identity of indigenous peoples in the Cordillera should not take away in the first place their right to determine the development that they want. So ngayon, hindi ko alam kung ilang tao nakakaintindi what this autonomy means. What does it mean to my children? What does it mean to the women in the village?
Yes.
What does it mean to the elders who can or who should then be passing their traditional knowledge to their children? So this is strengthening identity of peoples in autonomy.
Thank you so much, Helen. So she posed a lot of questions that probably later on our main speaker would be able to answer.
Gusto niyo bang sumikat, kumita at makilala? Advertise now and reach your target market anytime, anywhere.
Diyanay pagtutungtungan tayo, tatangaal daw, maipanggap nga rod daytoy, diyanay 3 core messages iti autonomy for the people as to policies and progress. Nangag tayo ti kapanunutan ni Miss Helen earlier, no, it will strengthen ba iti kababalin tayo ma-IPs dato na autonomy? No, agprogreso tayo ba? Ditunay na autonomy? To elaborate further on those concerns, adamod dito yung kadwa tayo ni Kabsat tayo for Vladimir Cayabas. Good day once again. This is for our Talk Time program. And this afternoon, we have with us a very popular councilor of the city of Baguio. No other than our adding here, Councilor Vladimir Cayabas, to talk about the 3 core messages of autonomy. Specifically, he will focus on policies and progress. So, ading, anya ti panagkunam, kas ano, nga sumayaat, iti kasasaat, ti Cordillera, panagduruas ti Cordillera, no adda itinay otonomiya tayo.
Amo na kat kablaawan tayo man digiti amin nga kakailian ditoy Cordillera Administrative Region iti enem nga probinsya iti happy IP month kada tayo. Kat salamat iti talk time team tayo mayda dito bisina tayo. Kat kahit nga damagan may panggap garod iti otonomiya. Amo na kat personally suportaran tayo iti dito yung adang kung nata yung programa para ti autonomous region of the Cordillera. It's all about the three core messages. May panggap garod iti dito yung autonomous region para iti region tayo. Umuna kat may panggap ti enhance Cordillera identity. May kadwa kat the responsive policies, especially for the Cordillera soon to be autonomous region. And of course, the so-called progress for all. So, anya ti impact na aya daytoy iti region tayo no agbalintay garud nga autonomous region. First, no apay nga kayat tayo nga agbalin nga autonomous region taadda dagitoy kayat tay nga ma-improve nga sistema pagsayaatan iti tumunggal maysa. And part of it is no other than the identity of Cordillerans. When we speak about Cordillerans, hanla nga digiti kakailian tayo nga IPs, hanla nga kakailian tayo nga igurots, ngampure lang digiti kunata yung nagnaed iti different parts of the Cordillera, but the most important thing, they are now considering themselves as part of the growth, the journey, or even the struggle of our region. So nung nagbalintay nga autonomous region, pumikpik sa dayta nga identity. Hangrunan, i-relate tayo ti identity iti kultura. Kultura tayo akas Cordillerans. Basically that our region is simply a temporary region because of the signing of Executive Order 220. Agat nung ma-repeal dayta nga Executive Order, the possibility ang kunatayo kat agsublito ti mother region tayo, more so nga adda dagitoy kayat tay kumang programa nga pagsayaatan dagiti kakailian tayo nga Cordillerans, especially in terms of again projects inclined with our culture as Cordillerans. Iti may kadua ket kunatay responsive policies. What is applicable in other place, just like for example in Metro Manila, is not necessarily applicable here in the Cordillera Administrative Region. Ada di kunatay nga peculiarities. Well, di kanayon tay nga mangmangeg, just like for instance, mangala ka iti permit, mangala ka di central office, practically nga amon ti central office, wanya ti talaga nga sitwasyon dito lugar tayo. So why not to localize it? But that is only possible when we will become autonomous region. Adapay, di ay daduma, just like for instance, dahiti ko natay Rojas Law. Tapos di kastakat, makapatakder tayo, ti espilaan, makahire tayo ti items for teachers. At least aday ti 45 number of pupils niya nga pagrugyan tayo. Well, in highly urbanized areas, just like in Metro Manila, iti population kathaan nga problema ng dito'y ayam tayo ta may nga bantay, may nga household. Kaya nga personally ako kat may sa tayo nga kung natin nakapadas iti dayta nga klase iti polisiya nga masapol nga we walk for how many hours for us to be able to finish our education. Gapos tadiyay polisiya nga masapol nga makaurnong ka ti kastoy nga estudyante, santo ka makapatakder ti eskwelahan ken makahire ka digitoy teachers tayo. Again, what is applicable in Metro Manila is not necessarily applicable here in the Cordillera. Kitaan tayo't sitwasyon tata kakailian. Dahito ko natay pandemya, COVID-19 pandemic. It doesn't mean na kung ano yung approach nila sa central office, isumot lang ti approach tayo. Let me cite a particular example. In other areas, awan unay problema, iti may panggap ti internet connection. But when we go to the far-flung areas of the Cordillera, magnakat manunga oras, awan pa'y kuryente da duma, practically awan ti signal, awan ti internet. And yet, kayat iti central office ti Department of Education na uniformity of the application of the so-called blended learning system. Is it not possible nga kadagiti lugar nga narigat, nga papanan, ken aammo tayo nga agaammo ti tattao, awan mo ti magpapan nga bisita, hanmat nga basta nga makarwar? Is it possible for us to apply still the usual one? And that is the face-to-face. Why? Disadvantage tayo nga IP, that tayo nga Cordillerans. It is because we don't have the means for us to be able to adopt the so-called blended or the so-called digital-based learning. Kaya kanda dumapay nga polisiya nga manen makita tayo nga mas applicable kada tayo kan mapagsayaatan ti tumunggal maysa. Yung isa naman is progress for all. Yeah? When you speak about progress for all, hindi lang po naman about financial yan. Mag-start tayo sa polisiya, mag-start tayo sa people involvement in engagement. Mas maging engaged tayo when we are under autonomous region because we know that people here are accountable no nyat pagbalinan iti region tayo. Mas as-asideg de ko na tayo nga paka-follow upan dagiti projects, if not for example programa pang gobyerno. Agad nuhaan nga mayat ipanaka-implementar na diay as-asideg ka na maamu tayo dagitoy accountable nga officials tayo. Apart from that, of course, we speak about the financial matters. Iti maysa nga polisiya wenno ko natay may isang advantage no tayo ko autonomous region, apart from the share of the different departments from the General Appropriations Act that will be maintained. Adamot lang iti share iti LGU based on the IRA, the Internal Revenue Allotment. Ket adapay ti maited kada tayo nga seed money pagrugyan tayo, it's a subsidy coming from the national government nga mainayon kahit nasa on top of what we are already receiving. So meaning progress for all in terms of policies, in terms of people involvement, in terms of community empowerment, but of course even in terms of the kunatay projects, programs, and activities which we all know nga ano ado ti plano tayo, ado ti projects tayo, kasapulan mo ti umanay nga pundo tapnuhan tayo mo't nga kakaasi nga kan kanayon nga maud-udi in terms of internal revenue allotment amu tayo nga of all the regions kada tayo ti maysa nga maud-udi no kababaan, but at least man lang kung mabibigyan po tayo ng add-on na budget for us to advance our region, I think that we have a big chance to catch up with other regions because we deserve that as Cordillerans and as Filipinos. So daytay iti kayatay nga may pabingay katamok nga dapat iti dadto mga damagan ni Doc dito.
Actually, awanan adi. Kompleto diya yan. Very clear the explanation mo about the 3 core messages of autonomy.
Hey guys! Grasya po ito. Lagi ka bang on the go at hanap mo ay balitang sigurado, totoo at walang tinatago? Sa Regional News Group o RNG Luzon, mabilis at accurate na balita, madali niyong ma-access. Pwede via Twitter. I-tweet lang ang inyong sumbong at hinaing using the hashtag RNG Luzon. Instagram, Facebook, at YouTube. Huwag kakalimutang i-hit ang notification bell para lagi kayong updated sa aming mga bagong videos. Like, follow, and subscribe ang mga social media accounts ng RNG Luzon.
Gusto niyo bang sumikat, kumita at makilala? Advertise now and reach your target market anytime, anywhere.
ay Marky Hora. Team bahay ka rin ba katulad ko? Pero gusto mong laging updated sa mga balitang napapanahon at interesting? From the comfort of your own home, maaari ka nang maging informed. Sa Regional News Group o RNG Luzon, mabilis at accurate na balita, madali ninyong maa-access. Pwedeng via Twitter. I-tweet lang ang inyong sumbong at hinaing gamit ang hashtag RNG Luzon, Instagram, Facebook, at YouTube. Hit the notification bell para lagi kayong updated sa aming mga bagong videos. Like, follow, and subscribe ang social media accounts ng RNG Luzon.
We're back. Our main speaker, who will synthesize the whole discussion on the core messages of autonomy, is no other than the Director of the Department of Trade and Industry for Baguio and Benguet. We have with us here Attorney Samuel Gallardo. So, sir, we are so happy to have you with us today. And it's very timely because what we will be talking this morning would be about the 3 core messages of autonomy, particularly people, process, and progress. And in your capacity as the head of DTI for Benguet and Baguio, we would like to hear from you how this 3 core messages of autonomy would eventually lead to the programs, the mandates that you have here at the Department of Trade and Industry.
Thanks, Marie, for the question. Actually, it's a very big privilege for me to be able to talk to you about the core messages relative to Cordilleran autonomy. So, as you mentioned, the core messages focus on 3 Ps: people, policies, and progress. There's a need for us to be able to enhance our identity as Cordillerans, which is not very well pronounced at the current time. Also, we need to look at some of the policies that are being implemented at the national level to see if it really addresses the needs of our region in terms of our economy and our social development. And lastly, one of the things that we would like to emphasize is the need for us to progress at a rate similar to the progress in other regions. You may well know, of course, that the Cordilleras is one of the least populated regions in the country, and it has a relatively small size compared to other areas in Luzon, Visayas, and Mindanao, which is one of the reasons why we have the lowest income revenue allotments coming from our national government. And that has resulted in, piecemeal development activities or piecemeal development projects in the region. So under EO 220, the purpose of the executive order was to create a body that will administer the affairs of government in the region, as well as to more or less introduce or accelerate the economic and social growth and development of the various local governments of Cordilleras. Also, and primarily, the reason why we have EO 220 was to prepare for the establishment of a permanent autonomous region in CAR. The reason why we would want to have an autonomous regional Cordillera government is so that we can uphold our regional identity for the Cordillera provinces. We have a very distinct, unique identity because of the various groups that exist in CAR. And I must say that I am proud that in the Cordilleras we have a very rich history. You would know, of course, that we are one of the least influenced areas in the Philippines during the 300-year period of Spanish rule in the Philippines. Another thing that we would want to emphasize when we talk about people in the Cordilleras is that we have very beautiful and very diverse natural resources, and I think it would just be proper for us to strengthen our appreciation and conservation of the environment. Also, I feel that we need to have better representation of the Cordilleran people at the cabinet level, and this can only be done when we have a regional governor who will be able to sit as equals, okay, at the national level to discuss our priorities and our development agenda. So the second P in the 3 Ps of Cordilleran autonomy focuses on policies. This is something that ought to be discussed thoroughly, because as far as we are concerned, from experience, a lot of national laws that are currently in place are more or less generic. They apply to all regions, and sometimes these laws do not fit the unique needs of the Cordilleras. Let's just look at a few examples. The Local Government Code of 1991 states that the basis for the issuance of IRA is population and size. But since we are one of the least populated regions in the Philippines, and we have one of the smallest regions in terms of area, we receive one of the smallest, if not the smallest, IRA. And that is detrimental to our development agenda because we cannot fund our programs for socio-economic development. Another example of a policy that proves to be very challenging in CAR is the Forestry Code. Okay, we have a lot of issues with respect to how we manage our forests, and these may not, the Forestry Code as it is currently crafted or created does not address the unique needs of all of our provinces. We also have issues with the Rojas Law and the payment of environmental services. So these are just a smattering of some of the national laws that are problematic in terms of implementation. But if we do have an autonomous region of the Cordillera, imagine how much positive energy we will be bringing in terms of management of our resources. So we'll be able to formulate our own policies that will be responsive to the needs of our region. Okay? And because we do respect our indigenous practices, we would also be able to recognize and elevate relevant indigenous knowledge systems and practices in order to make them part of our general policies. Okay, so they become integral to what it is that we will be implementing in the region. And as I mentioned earlier, for people, we will now have better representation because the regional governor will now be sitting as a member of the President's Cabinet, and also will be sitting as a member of the NEDA board, among others. So in terms of representation for socio-economic development policy formulation, we will now be better represented. The third P, which is progress, this is where we need to have a lot of interventions. As the provincial director of DTI, Baguio Benguet, we find it sad, we find it disheartening that a lot of our MSMEs are suffering because of programs that do not seem to fit their current situation or their current scenario. So while we do implement projects or programs that are intended to develop our MSMEs, somewhere along the way, autonomy issues such as maintaining our identity as a region and being able to equitably distribute the resources come into play because let's face it, because of our very challenging terrain and other local issues, there are some forms of assistance that do not reach them. But if we do have a regional government that will look after the particular development needs of our MSMEs, then we can program, we can develop and implement more particular or more specific activities that will help our MSMEs. That may not usually be seen in other regions. Also, the one thing that I'd like to add in the third P, which is progress, is that a lot of our natural resources, in terms of extraction of natural resources, they are controlled by our national government. And sometimes when they do these things, we do not get free, prior informed consent from our local communities. And that has actually been one of the concerns of our communities over the years. So with the regional government in place, with an autonomous region of the Cordilleras, we will have more control over how our resources are used, how much of it is extracted, how much of it is preserved for our future generations. So in terms of extractive industries, hydropower, for example, and the use of our water, I would think that an autonomous region of the Cordilleras will be much more beneficial in terms of controlling these resources. There's also a need for us to distribute our economic growth. Kasi ang tendencies natin is it focuses on centers, urban centers already. Here in CAR, in fact, Baguio City seems to be getting the lion's share of economic growth. It's focusing on Baguio, but we would want it to go spread out further in the region so that development centers will not only be concentrated here, they will also be seen in other provinces. And that will mean that more people will experience a more comfortable life, a more stable life in terms of their security, in terms of their economic well-being. And that can only happen if we are truly autonomous. I look forward to a region that will be at par, or if not better, than the other regions that are already well established. I'd like to see a region where all of the people that live within it are happy, are content, are at peace with nature, and they're able to enjoy the benefits of life without impeding the rights of others. I would like to see a region that has a unique identity that it can share to others, that it can be proud of. And that can only happen if we have an autonomous region of the Cordilleras. So I look forward to the support of everyone. You may not be an indigenous person, but you are a Cordilleran if you have come to CAR and you have come to live with us and accept the culture and the diverse characteristics of the region. So if there's a message I'd like to send out to everyone, it is that having an autonomous region of the Cordilleras will be beneficial not only to Cordillerans but to the entire nation. We grow, we become one if we come together and push for autonomy. So let's go for one Cordillera.
Maligayang pagbati po sa pagdiwang ng ika-34 na anibersaryo ng SIPAT. Ang rehiyon ng Cordillera ay matagal nang kilala sa inyong makulay na kultura at sanaysay. sa ating lipunan. Kaya naman nakikisa ako sa pagdiwang ng SIPAT na isinusulong ang kapayapaan at kaunlaran ng inyong rehiyon. Umaasa ako na ang okasyon na ito ay magbibigay ng inspirasyon sa inyong mga miyembro at komunidad para harapin ang mga suliranin ng ating bansa ngayon. Ibinibigay ko ang aking buong suporta sa inyong paglalakbay tungo sa pagtupad ng inyong mga hangarin para sa inyong lugar. Magsikap po tayo para makamit natin ang ating pangarap ng isang mas maunlad na Cordillera. Muli, congratulations po, ingat po kayo, at maraming salamat po.
Dagiti kapanunutan, dagiti na speakers tayo tatakot ng lawlawag manan kada tayo, no anya ba daytoy nga otonomiya. Ket agtultuloy kayo nga rod kuma nga dungeg nga agbuya dito'y programa tayo nga Talk Time with Mike Bognosen and yours truly, tapno umun-unog pay ti panakaawat yu ti tunay autonomy. So again, we thank you for NEDA RDC CAR for this program in cooperation with the NCIP Commissioner's Office under Commissioner Gary Kayat, and of course dagiti amin nga mangsop-suporta ti programa tayo. Salamat.
Cradled by majestic mountains, blessed with nature's flowing fountains, blooming flowers and verdant hills, is a region of murmuring rills. Here the freedom-loving people, strong our bond, it's hard to topple. For our freedom we rise and fight, our priceless ancestral birthright. Cordillera, region of wonder, hail, beloved land, your name we shall not fail. Honor and fame to you we strive to bring, your glory one we shall forever sing. Neath the sky the rains may gather, angry clouds may crazily wander, but the sun shines forever fair as we climb up the golden stairs. Dreams of peace, of oneness and progress, cherished goals our region presses, striving to build a brighter dawn for our children to call their own. Cordillera, region of wonder,